Hey guys, it's the Melblade5 with another random video to end off the month as I struggle to think of a topic for a Halloween video for this year. I've talked about things that are actually creepy before, but many years ago my standards on what was creepy or scary was much lower, as I was a huge wimp when it came to playing games as a kid. When trying to think of an idea for the Halloween themed video, I started reminiscing on things in games that scared me when I was a kid, but when I thought about them or got to those moments again years later, I think, why did this scare me so much? Some of these things are really embarrassing things to get scared by when looking back on them. However, they can't be as embarrassing as some of the mistakes I've made in previous videos, much less some of my past pronunciations like Ephraim. So for this all coming back to me, and with not much else to do before working on the next non-Let's Play video, let me go over things that are totally not scary, but were, for some reason, scary to a 7 to 10-year-old at the time. The very first thing that comes to my mind when I think about the subject, and it's what I think of whenever I think about this place in general, is the Eterna Forest music from Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. I was actually scared of this place when I first played Gen 4 because of the music. It made me feel extremely unsettled as soon as I reached Eterna Forest for the first time, so I would always try to get through the area as fast as possible, or sometimes even mute the sound on the DS just so I could stop listening to the music. It gets even worse, as I had a working action replay cartridge at the time as well, and I would often use that and apply the walk through walls cheat so I could pass through the trees and just skip the whole forest if I ever needed to go by that area again. I was too lazy to get a HM slave for cut. That's how afraid I was of the forest solely because of the music. I always felt nervous thinking that there would be some kind of jump scare to coincide with the seemingly unsettling music, or something disturbing would come up, so having the wild Pokemon battle theme just pop in didn't help. They also used this theme for the Snow Point Temple, so when I tried to get Regigigas as a kid, I had those exact same feelings, but worse, as the temple is much bleaker visually, and it had a kind of claustrophobic feel for someone who isn't even claustrophobic. Then when I couldn't get Regigigas since I didn't know the exact requirements at the time, I bolted out of there. The reason why I found the music scary was because of the piano part at the beginning. That's what made the whole unsettling vibe sink into me, and even now it kinda reminds you of a music box, which I know horror movies love to use that, so maybe that subconsciously played a part too? For years, I dreaded replaying Gen 4 partially because of the Eterna Forest, but when I did pluck up the courage to play through Pearl again years later, I realized that the music was not scary at all. It's actually a peaceful and upbeat song. The beginning part with the piano is so short, and it doesn't come up again until the bit where the track has to loop. Once you pass that part, it's very happy and soothing, so I have no idea how my young mind blocked out the majority of the track when I didn't mute the DS. I went from being terrified of this track to really liking it, yet whenever I listen to it I can't help but remember how much of a wuss and idiot I was all those years ago when it came to this one thing. You know what's the worst part of this? Because I never bothered to get a HM slave for cut, or really use any HMs aside from Surf and Fly, I never entered the old chateau. You know, the actually scary area in the game. It was always the totally not scary outside part that got me. I now dread to think how my 7-year-old self would have reacted if he did go into the old chateau. But that wasn't the last of Gen 4 needlessly scaring me. As part of me having that action replay cartridge, I used a cheat to complete the Pokedex in Pearl. So by the time I got the National Dex in the post-game, I had data on every single Pokemon that existed at that time. This even spoiled me on the event legendaries like Shaman, Darkrai, and even Arceus, way before they were officially revealed, and, more importantly for this topic, all the new evolutions for past Pokemon. So I guess you could say I was one of the youngest leakers ever. I just never told anybody about it, like what all actual leakers should do so they don't ruin the hype. Having data on all the Pokemon gave me access to, amongst many other things, their front and back sprites, with one Pokemon possessing a sprite that left a not so great impression on me. Frostlass. I was scared of Frostlass's back sprite. I didn't even know why it scared me when I looked at it as a kid, just something about it seemed creepy to me. Maybe it was the pose it was in being slightly tilted or how skinny its body and biceps are, but that's purely speculation. Not even my young self could rationalize why I found this one sprite so creepy. I remember even checking this sprite on multiple occasions whenever I happened to be going through the Pokedex near Frostlass, and finding it creepy every single time, but still with no explanation. Yet I would still find it just as creepy all the same. I think I may have discovered a new form of horror. The only thing I could comment on was how weird the red ribbon is on its back, but that had nothing to do with why I found it creepy. It's just an observation derived from me not understanding what it's based on. It's ironic now, as not only do I not feel any sort of disturbed or unsettled feeling when looking at the sprite, but Frostlass has been a Pokemon I've kind of wanted to use for some time but never had the opportunity. Even though it doesn't have particularly outstanding stats, it has good speed but not much else that is super noteworthy. Going outside of Pokemon now, to a series that shouldn't even be remotely scary whatsoever, Mario. How can Mario possibly have anything scary in it? Aside from random Easter eggs which I didn't even know about when I was a kid. Even Luigi's Mansion, which Nintendo kinda plays up as being a slightly horror-focused part of the overall series, isn't even scary. It's far more comedic spoopiness, despite what the advert for Luigi's Mansion 3 would suggest. So for the non-scary thing that actually scared me when I was young, that goes to the random boss of the Ghostly Galaxy, Bouldergeist. This relates to something I repeatedly brought up during the Mario Galaxy Let's Play, being that I sucked at Galaxy 1 so much when I was younger. It took me forever just to beat the race in the second mission of Ghostly Galaxy, so when I eventually managed to beat it, I immediately proceeded on to the next mission as I could finally see something new. I kept wondering what a Bouldergeist was throughout my first playthrough of the level, and by the time I got to the boss fight, because I sucked so much, I found the fight incredibly challenging and honestly could not win no matter how hard I tried. It was more so the difficulty that made me scared of Bouldergeist rather than the boss itself. Compared to Fiery Dino Piranha, another boss that took me forever to beat when I first fought it, I persevered because it was simply a harder version of the first boss, so I felt I could realistically win. But with Bouldergeist, at the time I thought I stood no chance of beating it as I had difficulty dodging its attacks and hitting it with the bomb boos. I might have been unaware that you could destroy the stalagmites with the spin, but I don't remember that part well. So after quitting the level, the thought of trying again became so daunting to me that the other aspects of the level, like the fact that it takes place in the spooky themed galaxy, the boss theme, and Bouldergeist sound effects made me develop a fear of going back there as I was incredibly worried that I would get owned again. But after quite some time had passed, I want to say a couple of months, I plucked up the courage to do a second attempt at the Bouldergeist battle, and defeated him very easily that time. Bouldergeist isn't even that hard of a boss in the first place, so being bad at fighting it was already embarrassing enough. But it's more embarrassing that my sucking resulted in me having a fear of this thing for a noticeable period of time due to pure paranoia. Luckily, that fear went away as soon as I beat it. This is another case of if I'd only known this at the time, as if me being bad at the fight didn't already make me scared of it enough, imagine how I would have reacted at the Daredevil comet if I had seen it back then. Speaking of which, nowadays, Bouldergeist stands out to me more so from the epic battle that took place in my Mario Galaxy LP during the Daredevil battle as it proceeded to take up almost the entirety of the episode. Now for the last of these dumb things I used to be scared of. Going in full circle as it comes back to something music related, and I saved the best for last as this is by far the stupidest thing to get freaked out by out of everything mentioned in this video. So there's this weird game called The Dog Island. I think most people know this game because of Game Grumps, but my sister actually used to own this game when we were younger, and I played a fair bit of it myself. It's not a particularly memorable game, in fact I only remembered it existing from Game Grumps. But there will always be one thing about this game that sticks out to me just cause I was scared of it when I played the game as a kid. The cave music. Just like Eterna Forest, as soon as I reached the first cave in the game, the music made me extremely unsettled and resulted in me thinking there would be something scary around the corner or something would pop out. After playing through a bit of that first cave, I became so shaken that I quickly went back the way I came to get out ASAP, and actively avoided going back despite being required for story progress and some side quests. It wasn't until seeing my sister play that part of the game and learning that the cave was fairly short that I decided to rush through to get to the next area and continue the game. Even then, I think I might have had the TV muted. Later on, it got much worse, as after getting much farther in the game, I reached the Chiro Caves, if I'm saying that right, which uses the exact same music track and is quite a bit bigger than the last cave. Upon entering the cave for the first time and hearing that music again, I immediately left and dreaded the thought of even going back there. I just hung around the outside village since it was peaceful, but never entered the cave. Part of what made this bit worse was that my sister had already gotten past this part by the time I reached the cave, so I had no idea how long it was. One time, I did try going through it and almost got killed by a bunch of bats, which made me even more scared to go back in as I kept getting worried I would die. I even imagined a sort of Dark Souls style death screen when thinking of those prospects, which made it dumb when I learned what the actual death screen looks like from Game Grumps and it's just really cartoony. Eventually, I did go back in and just booked it straight for the exit, which doesn't take very long if you just do that, and made it to the other side. Though I don't remember much after that. I know there was a snow area on the other side of the cave, and I got to the canyon village, but that's about it. By now, I think you can tell why this is such a stupid thing to be scared by. Even as a kid, and to the point that I was afraid of it. Not only is the cave theme not even remotely scary either, it's actually a peaceful and atmospheric song like the rest of the game's soundtrack, but it's a game where you play as a frickin' puppy! Why should I have expected to see something scary come up in the caves? Why did I imagine a Dark Souls death cinematic? It's a cutesy, cartoony game intended for children. This level of paranoia is absolutely absurd, and when listening to the cave theme again for this video, I failed to even think of an idea why I was so scared of it by that age. Looking back on all these things made me not only develop a ton of embarrassment towards myself, but also a level of self-irony as I reflect that I was somewhat traumatized by some of the most minuscule things back then. Whereas nowadays, I have no issue looking at something like this. I'm weird. What else is new?